Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dorm Room Ventures. Today, I'm joined by Nick Schutt, a serial entrepreneur with companies in mental health, GovCon, events, and tech, and the host of his very own podcast, Robots and Red Tape. Nick's journey through the entrepreneurial landscape has taught him the critical importance of finding the right co-founder and the dynamics that make or break a partnership. In this episode, we dive deep into the art of co-founding a business. Listen, it's not just about having a groundbreaking idea. It's about identifying complementary skill sets, understanding the role of written agreements, and learning from past co-founder conflicts. Whether you're embarking on your first startup or looking to strengthen an existing partnership, this conversation is packed with insights that will guide you on your entrepreneurial journey. All right, enough talk. Let's get straight into it. Hope you all enjoy. All right, Nick, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I really appreciate you being here. Excited for a really banger episode, all about co-founders. I'm really excited for you to be here, man.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've hosted a lot of podcast episodes. I haven't been a guest a lot of times, so it'd be a good time.
Definitely on the other side of the screen, right? I personally haven't been a guest either. I don't know how it feels. Maybe it's more stressful. I don't know how it is from your end, but nonetheless,
I'm not stressed at all, brother. Don't worry.
No, you don't seem stressed. You don't seem like the stressed type of person at all. But yeah, so just hopping into things, right? You know, the episode, the title is "Do You Even Need a Co-Founder?" Right? It's all about when should you get a co-founder? How should you go about getting it? When you're working with them, how do you work with them? And then when you go through major issues, how do you deal with them properly? But really going into, the beginning of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear a little bit about your early entrepreneurship and your first co-founder experience. How did you get into entrepreneurship, right? What's your story and what was your first company that you started? And then within all that, how did the first co-founder come into the picture?
Yeah, man. No, so appreciate you having me on. Just so folks know, I'm currently running 2 businesses, starting a third. And in addition to that, I'm starting a nonprofit. I also run another podcast called Robots and Red Tape, where I interview AI experts. So I started my first company in August of 2016. So about 9 years ago now. And yeah, man, it's funny. I just don't know how else to live. Truthfully, is kind of how it is. I'm a terrible employee. The last time I had a job, Donald Trump was not a politician. He was a businessman. So you have an idea of how long it's been. And I got fired in like 2.5 weeks because I'm not a good employee. Right. And understanding all of that, I'd gone back to school in my like 24, 25 I was getting my associates. I was, go get my business degree, my bachelor's in business. And it was about 2 weeks before the start of my junior year. I got my associates and I was, I had been accepted to a top 50 business school and was deciding like, do I want to go to school or what else? And it's like, dude, I just decided to go for it. And so, yeah, August 2016, I just decided that, I had a background in working in recruiting, and I decided I was going to start my own recruiting company. And I had my first check to deposit in the bank before I had the paperwork to legally open a bank account. And it's just been off to the races ever since then. So, that business I started on my own, and it's the co-founder thing is interesting because I have co-founders in other businesses. And so, it's being able to compare and contrast that it's an interesting place to sit. So I started that one in 2016, still doing it, still going strong with it by myself. I started my second company in 2020. End of 2019, beginning of 2020. Right before COVID hit, I started Healing Mind Wellness. We're a state-licensed outpatient mental health clinic. I have 2 offices in Maryland providing psychiatry and therapy in person and via telehealth. And so, I have co-founders there. I have partners there. Right now there's 4 of us. There used to be a 5th. And, I started it. I met this partner smoking cigars and drinking brown liquor is how I met him. And, it was, we were looking at acquiring a psychiatry practice and doing it ourselves. And, the reason I had a co-founder in this one is first, it's more capital intensive to build, like to rent office space and renovate it and do all of that than it is to just like start a recruiting company. And then second is because I did not have a background in healthcare. My only experience in healthcare was as a patient. And so this guy had he'd worked with a couple of like substance use disorder clinics before, things like that. And, it's like, dude, it, let's go. And so it's kind of, so I signed leases I signed a lease with a personal guarantee attached to it. So if you don't know what that means that I use personally using my assets guarantee that we're going to pay the rent. And so if you can't pay the rent from the business, it's coming out of your own pocket. And that was 3 months before the world shut down because of COVID. So it was a really interesting couple of years. So I can get into the story of that a little bit more if you'd like, but the real reason I went with a partner there is he had more experience, right, in that field specifically. And in addition to that, I think the decision of partnership, like having a partner versus being on your own is far different, right? It's all you. And partners and like having a partner means you have somebody that you can work with that's there it's a force multiplier, right? Ideally, you want a partner that has a different skill set than you in some ways, but that common point of understanding.
Perfect. You mentioned how you brought on your co-founder because he had more experience in the medical space. For you personally, that was why you chose to bring on a co-founder. For other students, when do you think it actually makes sense for a student to bring on a co-founder? What should they be assessing? What should they be evaluating?
So first, what I will say is that a friendship founded on a business is far better than a business founded on a friendship.
Yeah.
Period. Right? Like, you going into business with friends sounds like a great idea. It's usually not.
Mm-mm.
Right? You're overlooking red flags because of years of experience with them, things like that. You're not, you're not as, present and engaged as, it's just different, man. It's not present and engaged. It's that like when you have the friend, then all of a sudden you can lose the friend and friendships fall apart. Like the co-founder that I'm talking about, he's no longer involved in my life at all.
Mm-hmm.
He and I at one point were very tight. And so I would say that when you should bring one in is a case-by-case basis. Are you like, is it like, two people are talking about a business and start it together in a door? Like that's a different thing than looking to add co-founders to a project, right? So, but again, I would say like the real important part for me is to have, differing skill sets. So like, with EVLG Solutions, it's a woman-owned, service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, SDVOSB, that I'm starting with I'm starting as a minority partner, obviously, right? I'm neither a woman or a veteran, but my partner is like, she's an amazing project manager, an amazing program manager, amazing at operations and details, and like gets as much fulfillment out of organizing my chaos as I get out of creating it. And so we're very different in that way. We have different strengths, different skill sets, different backgrounds, right? She was a captain in the Army. I've just run businesses and had like no accountability for my entire life. And so, like having that differing background means that you're coming at things from different problems, right? People always talk about diversity. Like you just want people of different, that look different than you in the company. But I feel like people don't actually talk about why it's important, because there was a study done years ago trying to figure out why different research labs had different levels of output, right? And so this guy, and I'm blanking on his name, he went for like 5 years on a study and was embedded in meetings with like staff of a whole bunch of these different like amazing, like top of the line scientific research institutions, right? Interestingly, what he found was one of the major differences in the level of output is how they organize themselves and work with themselves, right? So, and the ones that were doing more diverse kinds of research and had people from like had biologists and physicists and chemists and doing all different kinds of research in one location, and then held collaborative meetings where you would sit and talk about your problem that you're working on with other people that are not in your field. they were far more productive than just a building full of physicists, because when you have the same training, have the same schooling, you think the same way, you're going to have the same blind spots.
Right. No, definitely.
I would say that, look for somebody that's complementary in more ways than one, and understand you're going to be married to this person. Like, you do real well. You could, I mean, rise together, but like, you also, like, I don't know if you know uh, who Fortinet is. Not Fortnite, Fortinet. They're one of the biggest cybersecurity companies in the world, right? It was founded by two brothers, and they still run the company, and it's like a Fortune 100 company. Like, they started something together, and they're just together the entire time. They rose from, like, I'm not going to say from nothing, I don't know their background, to billionaires by, like, together. But if it hadn't gone so well, they could have, like, could have broken some stuff down, right? Like, this interpersonal relationships and interpersonal problems are amplified in business, not the other way around.
No, yeah, definitely. Especially, that point, it hits home, man. My first ever startup, I started with my friend. So he was a very, very, very close friend of mine before. We said, screw it, let's start something. Fast forward a year, we do not talk anymore. It's just, unfortunately, that's just how it is. Like you said, you don't notice the red flags before, and whether you guys are compatible to work with each other. And so that kind of idea of what it could end up being in the worst way possible, it leads to a lot of fear in a lot of these student founders' minds, which may lead them to maybe try to lean more towards just starting something on their own. Do you recommend that there's ever a reason to start it on your own, or is it always better to have a co-founder, assuming that co-founder, like you said, has different perspectives in a different background?
Like, I mean, I think it just depends on the person. I started Artemis alone, and I still run it alone, right? Like, it's still, I own 100% of the company. I don't have any partners. I didn't have anybody to put money in. I just went out and hustled, right? And I think that's easier with, like, a services type business. But there are a lot of solopreneurs that they never grow past just themselves, right? They're like, like, I actually had drinks with a friend of mine last night who is considering starting his own BD consulting practice, but it'd just be him billing himself hourly, right? That's very different than having employees and something else, right? So I would say it really just depends on the size, on the business and your goals. Not everybody wants to build a business that is a couple hundred people or a couple thousand people. A lot of people are just happy with, or like it's your mom and pop store around the corner and they have, 8 employees. Like, they don't, not every coffee shop wants to be a Starbucks, even if
Hmm.
they could.
Yeah.
So I would say that the big variation there and the big variable there is going to be your goals and what you want to do with the business to begin with. So that's one. And, and then two is that you don't have to have a partner on day one. You can make that, like, I could theoretically go and, sell somebody a piece of Artemis now for, and have them buy in. Like, there's a lot of things I can do with that. But equity is also a tool, right? It's a tool that you can use to give people upside, invest them in a company. So I would say that, like, when you're starting something, decide how many points of the company you want to give. You want to, I'm not going to say give, but essentially put up for earning from, like, key employees. How many points do you actually want to end up with?
Right.
Would you rather have bigger percentage of a smaller number or a smaller percentage of a bigger number?
Yeah, like you said, equity is a tool, but you got to use it properly at the end of the day. You can't dilute everything, man. I remember, you know, there's so many stories of people hiring hiring like a small job, maybe a week's worth of software development in the first few stages of building, and they give them like 12%. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. But yeah,
It
no,
depends.
so
It depends on how key that piece of software is to the
that's
success of the
true.
organization,
That's very bad. Yes, yes,
right?
100%.
Like, just depends.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, when it comes to the idea of the right fit for a co-founder, you talked a little bit about how it really comes from their perspective and background, but additionally, how do you identify the right fit in terms of, the values, work ethic, kind of the vision that you see in them, right? How would you go about, you have a lot of experience with co-founders. How do you go about gauging that and seeing if it would work with you in the long term?
I mean, you like, a lot of it is you just don't really know, like, you just don't, like. but also how are you going about finding a co-founder is super important as well. Um, what when you're finding them, are you bringing somebody in after something's operational? Are you bringing them in, but like at ground zero? But like that would absolutely be something that I'm thinking about personally. But like the real important things to me are, work ethic is one. Like you can't teach work ethic. You know what I mean? Like you can't teach somebody to work hard and to hustle. You either got it or you don't. You either have the motor or you don't is one. And then like, do you actually like them? That's another one. Right? I don't want to work with somebody I don't like forever. You start there and you can build, right? I would also say like a shared vision for the company is super important. You got to be on the same page about that. You got to be on the same page about like the values of the company and what's important. So I would say values and values and work ethic, or like values, work ethic, and overall vision. And like, what does success actually look like? You know what I mean? That's another one. Like, so if you can agree on those, like, I mean, that's a great place to start. But also understand that they're probably going to lie to you.
Yeah. Like in what way?
They're going to lie to you for sure.
Have you had experience with that?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Really?
Percent. I no longer, one of my co-founder of my mental health company is no longer involved with the organization. We removed him for professional violations, and there was money missing, a lot of money missing. I mean, it's like the wrong co-founder cost me a lot of money, like 7 figures, like a lot of money. And so, you sit here, like, that's the cost of it too. That's where it can go. I mean, you can end up in debt, you can end up like not in great places. So, it's really important, real important to decide.
Definitely. And going off of that, I remember you were discussing this at a previous time, and you mentioned to me how the right co-founder has made you millions of dollars and the wrong co-founder has made you lose $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to focus on the former side first. When you started to kind of scale with your co-founder in any business, that comes to your mind that you're working on, when you guys were scaling and moving together very successfully, what did that work dynamic look like? How do you guys divide those responsibilities?
Yeah, man, we just did it based on strengths. That's really what it is. It's who's going to be more effective doing it, right? So, like, with the co-founder I'm working with currently at EVLG, we are, like she handles all the day to day from a managing the people perspective and answering the questions and handling them right, things like that. And I do like business development and write proposals and recruit and manage that side of it, right? So I do a lot of the forward facing stuff. She does a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and that's perfect for us because I'm better at that part and she's better at the other part. Again, we also not only do we like enjoy different things, like we're good at different things and we enjoy the different things. So it's complementary enjoyment instead of both of us wanting to do the same thing. You don't build a company just because if everybody is a coder, you know what I mean? You need operations, you need accountants, you need finance. Like there's a whole other side. There's massive parts of the other side of it that, you got to have people to do.
Definitely. And so you mentioned you split up roles based on what people are better at, what they enjoy more. When would they, on the other hand, share roles, right? When do you recommend roles are shared rather than just divided?
If everybody's accountable for it, nobody's accountable for it.
Interesting. Can you go more into that?
If it's everybody's job, nobody's going to do it. And you never want to share things like that.
So it's always just delegation.
Not always delegation, but the buck needs to stop somewhere. Somebody needs to be ultimately accountable for delivering, right? And if it's a whole team, you have you have a program manager who's accountable to you, and then they manage all their other people, right?
Interesting. I've never actually heard that take, but I can see that in a lot of places happening. Have you personally had experience with that? The idea, everyone's accountable, no one's going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Really?
that is a direct quote from meetings where I've told that to people. Like I sit and tell them, like, and that's why you have a team lead, right? That's why you have somebody who is accountable for things. They are the one, like, so I absolutely, Like, and in sometimes in these situations, right? Like, I'll go in and do some of the work underneath some of my co-founders behind them, but it's to help them. Not saying I won't work on it. I'm saying that it's not like ultimately I am not doing it because I'm not doing it because it's my job to. I'm doing it because I'm helping them. I'm also not accountable for getting it done. Right? It's just how responsibilities are swing around. Um, but ultimately, one person, the buck has to stop somewhere, or it's just not going to happen.
Definitely. Yeah, and so kind of going on a different side of things, I was curious, in that stage and also just in general, how important are written agreements or expectations, right? Like founder agreements or anything related to that.
That's 1,000%. You need one of those. Of course you did. Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. Not 1,000%. It needs to be in writing. And no, you cannot use AI to generate it. You could actually, I take that back. You can't sign an AI generated agreement. So when you're dealing, in my experience, and this is just how it is, it's a lot less expensive to have an attorney edit something than have them generate something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that being said, you 1,000% need an agreement. 1,000% needs to be in writing. It needs to be executed. It needs to be signed. Everybody needs to have a copy. You think
Yeah,
there's not going to be disagreements over money? You gotta. That all that needs to be negotiated and handled up front.
definitely. One of the startups that I worked on very early on, being a student, and this is very relatable amongst several students that I've seen, you don't really realize how big of a deal things can get and how bad it can truly get if you don't take the right precautions. So we ended up just working on this project, working on this startup. We didn't write any agreements. We didn't, draft anything up. We just built. And then time came that we were getting a lot of traction, and that was when we started the conversation. And that was far too late. That was probably 11 months into us working on the startup, and it was 11 months too late, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where everything became a problem because now you have, oh, listen, we're getting, this deal. We're getting, some money here. The paycheck's coming from here. We're getting a speaker event over here, that every single part of that serves as an aspect for someone to act selfish in a way. And I think that's to all our listeners, and Nick, you tell me what you think, but I think that's one of the key takeaways of this episode. When you start something, you need to draft something up. You need
Yeah.
something just in case.
Yeah. Imagine if that project you were working on was like Uber, right? In like 2008 or nine or whenever Uber started, right? And you had a falling out, and now only one of you gets to be the billionaire, right? Because you didn't sign something. Yes, you have to. And right, and even and now, like I mean, like it's so easy to go and get a founder agreement somewhere. Yeah, there's a million examples online. You can find one for free. You can use any of these LLMs to generate it, whether it's Gemini or ChatGPT or Bard, Llama, what it doesn't. All of them cover yourself.
Yeah.
Is the CYA. Cover your ass.
Hmm. And I kind of wanted to segue on this idea into going more into, major conflicts and fallout with a co-founder. You mentioned how issues with your co-founders have made you lose, seven figures, like you mentioned. Can you go a little bit more into that story and what are some of the biggest impacts and things you've learned both personally and professionally based off of that?
I mean, I'm a lot less trusting than I used to be. It's
Yeah.
one, but I mean, it was rough, man. It was absolutely rough. There was a whole lot of, we found out. I want to say in July, Augustish of 22. Yeah, July, August of 2022. Myself and my three other partners, and we dealt with our attorney, a new attorney that we had that the former partner didn't know anything about, and never met him. Right, engaged that guy, and then and then we went through all of it, going through all the legal agreements, all the documents, everything signed, the negotiate, and then we essentially showed up to the office one morning and let him know he was no longer employed and removed him, physically removed him from the premises.
What is that? What does that mean?
I had security there just in
Wow.
case.
Wow.
I
So
had,
it
I
was
had,
that bad. It was that bad.
I had a security company and a police officer there just in case. just in case. You never know, right? You just never know what's happening. But like we all knew exactly what we were going to do. We knew what we were going to say. We knew how the meeting went. We handed him paperwork and let him know that he had to leave at that right then, and if he had any questions, he could direct them to our attorney. And then he was no longer involved in the company. Um, but like we were 3 weeks or 4 weeks from going out of business because of financial mismanagement.
Really? So was this the same situation that you're talking about, that money
Yeah,
essentially missing?
the money was gone. The money was gone. The money was missing. And so we were almost out of business. And this is a business that I again I had a lease and I still have a lease with a personal guarantee attached to it. Right. So still, if we go out of business today, I still have to pay rent for another year and a half, no matter what. Right. And so um we were about to go under and our entire staff was about to revolt for other reasons and quit and leave. Right. And we were able to save them, stabilize the company. Um, Pay off all of the debt over a time, right? Because he took all kinds of loans out, took all kinds of debt on. And then we went and, like, now we're doing great. We're a profitable company now.
It's amazing. Wow, that's a crazy story. And so from your experience from that experience and just beyond, and also just seeing other people's experiences going through stuff like this, what do you think some of the most common causes of conflict are among young co-founders or just co-founders that are really new to the startup space?
I would say that a lot of the stories I've read and a lot of people I've talked to have said that like disparity in work ethic is a big one, right? So, I'm doing 80% of the work or 90% of the work and the other one's not showing up to meetings or doing the thing, carrying their weight, and they own like it's a 50-50 split or something, right? Um, I would also like inexperience is a big piece of it. So, but the only way you're going to get experience is doing it. So just like jump and do it, right? So I would say those are two of them. Money's a big one. Make sure books are online and make sure that they're handled in a way that everybody has access to them. Make sure that the right people have access to the money just in case, but like also, I'd say a lot of people don't understand the level of effort that this takes. Nobody really does until you do it. Um, Running a business is like building businesses and going from 0 to 1. And like, it's the hardest thing I've ever done personally. Right. And when you think about a business and growing it and scaling it, you know, there's certain kinds of actions and certain kinds of like things you can do to go from like 0 to $5 million in revenue. 5 to 20 is a different skill set entirely. Right. 20 to 50, again, completely different skill set. You have to do different things. You have to act in different ways. You have to behave differently to continue to grow and scale and be successful. When you start talking about businesses that are, $1 billion a year plus, it could not be more different from, 0 to 10. Like it's just completely different. Your day looks different. Your pressures look different. Everything you're doing is completely different. So just because you're good at the first stage doesn't mean you can do the rest.
Yeah.
You might be good at a later stage. It doesn't mean you can do the first.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And another question I had, actually, I kind of want to tweak it. The original question was, how do you resolve issues within a company and with a co-founder without breaking the team or the friendship, right? My question is, after hearing your story, is it really possible to resolve these extreme issues without even breaking the team or hurting the friendship in any way?
Nope. It depends on how extreme it is, but nope. Like shit's got to get sacrificed. You know, People get. I mean, you look at like bands that have been together for a long time and break up, or they only hack it for a little bit. They get like 5 years and then they're gone. Right? It's failed partnerships and failed interpersonal relationships. It's a relationship, right? It's one that you're going to talk to probably more than your significant other. It's going to be a lot. The actions you take are going to have consequences everywhere else in your life.
Yeah. And kind of diving a little bit more into that, kind of a message towards student founders, what would you say to a student who's currently struggling in a co-founder relationship or is just scared to bring one on?
Like, this is just like life advice. Delay never helped anything. Not talking about something that bothers you, never, that does not improve any situation. You got to have, let's say, if you can't have an uncomfortable conversation with with your business partner, then you should not be their business partner.
Yeah. No, that's valid. That's valid. Yeah, and one thing I wanted to touch on, you talked about the idea of expensive lessons. Do you think, at some point when you're going through the startup journey, entrepreneurship in general, do you think it's possible to avoid those expensive lessons, or do you think it's just inevitable at some point you're going to have a lesson that's going to cost you an extreme amount of money or relationships or assets in any way?
Just out of curiosity, do you know any ways to avoid making mistakes?
I mean, obviously there are a few here and there, but mistakes are everywhere. You can't mitigate all of them.
You
Yeah.
answered your own question, brother. Like, no. Yeah, I mean, there's ways you can set yourself up for success to mitigate potential downsides. A lot of that is agreements, is attorneys, is the right chemistry, the right co-founder, all of that, right? But I'm under no illusions that I could have avoided that mistake that I made, and I would have liked that, but it would have just been something else. It would have been some other lesson I needed to learn.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And so hearing this story and in general, just, getting that final reflections from this whole story that you brought us through, what's one key piece of advice for student founders deciding whether to team up or not, regardless of what the reason may be why they want to do it or not? So knowing what you want first before diving into everything.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can list out whatever you want there, but be realistic about what you can get. Like, what's important to you as a person? What's important? What do you want to be important to your co-founder? It's important to you as a company. Where do you want the organization to go? If you don't have that vision to share and a vision to share of what you want your co-founder to be, then you're just guessing.
Hmm. And do you have like a specific recommendation or preference on where student founders should go or how they should go about finding a co-founder? I know there's a lot of matching services. There's like Y Combinator has their own platform for matching co-founders. Do you think there's any specific way that a student should go about it, or is it just however works best for you?
That's how it works best for you, truthfully. I don't know. I mean, that's a person by person. What are you good at? What do you like? Right? What's best for you?
Definitely. Definitely. And so wrapping everything up, Nick, I just wanted, to bring everything to a close and let our listeners know, where can they follow your work and stay updated on everything you're doing. You're doing a lot, man. You're doing a lot. As many as you can list during this time.
LinkedIn is the only place I'm active on social media. Follow me. I mean, you can come find me at Nick Schutt on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's was key. It was and is key to my growth, is trying to remove some of those distractions. So yeah, come find me there. Robots at Robots at Red Tape on Instagram. I guess I'm there too. I forgot about that. I'm on YouTube also under Robots at Red Tape. Robots at Red Tape is available everywhere podcasts are available, pretty much, as far as I know. But yeah, Spotify, Apple, all of them. Pandora, I think too. I think I'm on Audible also. I'm not really sure, but man, absolutely all of those. Come find me. Love, you want to talk about AI, want to talk about some of the interesting developments that are going on there. Love that. Talk about government contracting and hiring and entrepreneurship. Always happy to have a conversation with some folks.
Perfect. Awesome. And to all our listeners, I'll include LinkedIn and also Robots and Red Tape in the show notes as well. Very interesting and really good show. I took a listen before hopping on this episode, so I'm definitely going to include it. But Nick, thank you so much once again for the priceless advice. I really appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch. All right.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. Hope you have a great day.
Likewise. All right. Bye bye. All right. That's it for my conversation with Nick. And before we close out, per usual, I want to leave you all with a few key takeaways. First, the importance of complementary skill sets cannot be overstated. As Nick said, and I quote, "Ideally, you want a partner that has a different skill set than you in some ways, but that common point of understanding. This diversity in skills can be a force multiplier for your startup." Second, written agreements are crucial. They provide clarity and prevent misunderstandings, ensuring that everyone is aligned on their roles and responsibilities from the start. And lastly, remember that a friendship founded on a business is far better than a business founded on a friendship. It's absolutely essential to maintain professional boundaries to protect both the business and personal relationships. All right, that's all for this week's episode. For anyone curious, I've attached Nick's LinkedIn and the link to his podcast, Robots and Red Tape, in the show notes. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in, and until next time, this is Dormer Ventures.